right, I'm Angela Keaton, and I'm here for Anti-War Radio, and that's airing right now on Chaos 95.9 and streaming live from antiwar.com. On the line with me today, we have Stan Hemry. He's an Arizona Counter-Recruiter, and he's going to set us straight on how we go about actually making some constructive change. Since we talk a lot about the problems, but we need everyday solutions. Stan, are you with us?
I sure am. Glad to be here.
Oh, well, thank you. Tell us a little bit about your organization, and then we'll talk a little bit about tactics.
Well, the organization was founded right after the ironic death of Pat Tillman by friendly fire, and I think that was in 2005. And we here in Arizona have a lot of military running our state. It's like $66 billion out of $99 billion for our total economy. So 2/3 are connected to military contractors or some sort of military spending. And we decided to start handing out flyers around high schools here in the area. And we targeted high schools that were mostly minority or people that were perceived as minorities. And these are where recruiters were doing the most heavy work. So we went to these high schools and we handed out flyers, and we got more high school kids to duplicate the flyers and hand them out themselves on campuses. And people formed groups in various parts of the valley. Well, one of the projects we worked on was called Opt Out Summer, and I don't remember which year it was, but probably 2007, we started a program where we wanted to see the opt-out form given to every student so they could have their names removed from the recruiter's list. Because after they passed the No Child Left Behind Act, which is true, there is no child left behind that can be recruited into the military, they started hounding people because they were given personal information from students, underage students, under 18 years of age, and they were it was given to them without their permission. So it was just automatically handed over unless you put an opt-out form in. Well, here in the Valley, those schools where the recruiters were working the hardest, they never mentioned it to the students, that they had an option to remove their name from this list. So with a campaign that we started, we were able to get the opt-out form in every student handbook in Maricopa County. And we feel like we were pretty successful, that at least, the students have a chance to escape the grasp of military recruiters.
Stan, you mentioned that there's a targeting of minorities or perceived minorities. You're seeing that there's a recruiting directed directly to young black men, young Mexican-American men specifically?
Well, I'm going to say that it's directed at people, since I guess they're recruiting both men and women, but that's correct. They're targeting people who they perceive as low income and having less opportunities maybe available to them to go to college and other things, which is totally false. There's plenty of ways to go to school that you do not have to go into the military first in order to achieve those goals. So they would go to these schools and they would, prey on these kids, and they would basically tell them that they're the only option, that that this is the best way for them to make a career and to do the work that needs to be done here in this country or wherever around the world, that they have to do it for the military. And lately, they've been connecting that to citizenship. So they're even offering the extra incentive of fast-tracking people to citizenship if they'll join the military.
Okay, so there's several levels of game playing and exploitation that are going on with I wouldn't say kids, but young people who are 16, 17, 18 years old. Is that fair?
Yeah, and I think it should be mentioned here that we never went to any of the high schools that had predominantly white students or were in upper middle class or perceived to be high-income areas. And those folks had the highest opt-out rates of any part of the city. So they were getting the message through to some students that the opt-out form was available.
All right, are there any consequences for signing this opt-out form?
Well, at this point, it's two consequences. As far as I know, they are not allowed to remove your name from other types of recruiting that goes on in schools, because there's lots of times there's sports recruiters, there's maybe different types of athletic programs as well as different academic programs, and they reach out to students and try and recruit them to their schools. As far as I know, they're supposed to remove them from only the military recruiters list, but not from all lists. Some schools refuse to split that up, and so they would just remove them from every recruiter's list.
Wow, that's damning. I'm assuming it's deliberate, but okay, that's a very real consequences, and certainly one that would hold a student back from actually doing what he or she might really want to do with one's life that doesn't involve going to a foreign country and sitting in a hole and killing people.
That's right, and these recruiters were relentless. They would call repeatedly. They would not stop calling if you asked them to stop calling, and parents were becoming irate. I was working with lots of parents at that point who were ready to see this change. Well, I'm not sure what year it was again, but the military added another form to the possibility of opt-out, and it's called the Jammers form. And I can't remember the acronym for it, but if you look on the website, ArizonaCRC.org, Arizona spelled out, and it has a link to the form that you need in either English or Spanish, and this form you send directly to the Pentagon. So you send the form in, you ask them to remove your name, and it should take care of it for at least that year, if not for the rest of your school career. So they set up a different type of system that was at the national level to remove you from the database, instead of each individual school removing you from the list that they hand over to the military in the fall.
Okay. Do you how involved are you with that? Do you ever speak directly to parents?
I certainly have worked with them in recent times. I haven't done a lot of work with parents just alone. Most of my work has been done with young people in college that are seeing JROTC on campus, folks that are in high school that are getting the most phone calls and the most pressure. And I meet them at rallies, anti-war rallies, and various other places. And usually I just encourage them to download our flyers from the website and print them out and hand them out to people, because this is an information campaign. And I want to add that I feel there's another component to the work in counter-recruitment, and that is that there's a tremendous suicide rate. There's probably 15 people a day who are unable to resolve their life crises after working in the military, and they decide to end their lives. And it's very tragic. It has exceeded the numbers of casualties that have been actually lost in the wars themselves. So we're not necessarily being taken out by our enemy, we're taking ourselves out.
I think the number's closer to 18 a day, according to the Veterans Administration.
Well, and those are vets. This doesn't include the active duty members who are killing themselves. So you're right. I mean, 18 is probably for vets, but then there's another certain number that's even higher that's for active duty people who see no way out of the military once they've volunteered for it.
Well, that's a terribly damning statement about be all you can be.
Mm-hmm. And it also shows that there's a tremendous deception that goes on in the process of recruiting, the signing of the contract, the actual terms being fulfilled in that contract, and then the breaking of them with this stop-loss program.
Okay. Tell me, what kind of people have you been able to bring into your organization? Are you able to do? Is it basically just people kind of committed on the left? Or are you able to get a kind of a coalition built of a lot of people who are really concerned about what this is doing to our youth?
Well, I haven't been able to get many of the people from the right to learn more about this information and then pass it along. There seems to be kind of a blind patriotism a lot of times that keeps people from analyzing things and figuring out what's the best course for themselves and their children to take. They just line up and say the pledge and sign on the dotted line, and they go. And that's why I mentioned Pat Tillman at the front end of the interview, because, you know, he's a very unique individual in that his parents and family were completely diehard, red, white, and blue, lots of military service up and down the line. And when, I guess, the planes hit the towers or something, I mean, soon after, he was, like, ready to go. And he went in with his brother. He turned down an NFL contract. He went into the service and did the thing that every American thinks they're supposed to do. If you buy the grand narrative, then he did exactly what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to turn down every opportunity available to you and rush into the military to save our country. Well, as it turned out, he looked into Iraq, because that's where he was first stationed in the Rangers. He didn't like it. They transferred him to Afghanistan. And then there was this really weird sort of strange thing that happened while he was there. And he sort of started transforming into someone who doesn't believe what the military tells him anymore. and was really beginning to question, why are we there, especially in Iraq, but I mean Afghanistan as well. And then finally, he was killed by his own troops. And friendly fire is one of those things that you never really know exactly what happened. But his mother wrote this great book called Boots on the Ground at Dusk, and she pretty much indicts Stanley McChrystal, the head of the armed forces in Afghanistan, as the person who probably either ordered or at least for sure covered up the death of Pat Tillman. So for any right-wing person out there who might possibly be listening to the show, don't think that the military wouldn't kill its own people just to get ahead further down the road.
Okay, Stan, that's because I have not read Mrs. Tillman's book. Could you kind of clarify that for me? You're saying McChrystal? Yeah, kind of just go into detail a little bit more for us here.
Yeah, she's a diehard American that had flags waving all up and down the street of where they lived. I think they lived in Oregon, or maybe it was California. They lived in California, and he was recruited to. I'm not a sports fan, but I believe it's the Sun Devils here at Arizona State University. He finished school here early and was recruited to the NFL, into the Cardinals, and he was going to be moved up even further into a bigger, better contract. And instead of doing that, he diverted and went into the Rangers and joined it with his brother, and they both became part of the same platoon. Well, while they were there, he became very popular, and I might add, the White House was always following him because of his status as a player in the NFL. And he was well liked, but my understanding was he wasn't the best player, but he was the kind of player that everybody loved because of his enthusiasm and his relentlessness. And he was a very smart man, well read. But there was another flaw that the military doesn't like, and that was he was atheist. And Stanley McChrystal, according to the mother in this book, was a very diehard Christian. And at some point, they figured out that he was atheist. And even during his funeral, they insisted that they put prayers into the service when the family doesn't even believe in prayer. They insisted on prayers in the service because it was televised nationwide. They got their war hero, whether he wanted to be one or not. They turned him into a war hero.
I just want to ask a question that you said about Stanley McChrystal. I thought maybe I caught that you believe that he had ordered the death, or that he was somehow instrumental in what happened to Tillman?
Yeah, he covered up. I'll kind of do it backwards. He covered up the death by saying that it was an attack, and that the enemy had been fought off until they killed him. And they gave him a star. They gave him a silver star because he had done so well in battle. Well, that was issued by Stanley McChrystal, and the whole story came from him. And